Hi, greetings from Justchem Solutions Private Limited. My name is Samitra Banerjee and I have 25 years plus experience in water treatment and wastewater treatment. Today I am presenting a training module of 3 hours on how to get the best out of your RO operations, how to reduce the maintenance cost, how to get the best out of your RO membrane life, better operations, better monitoring, interpretation of monitoring results are the key in this training. So let us see this training and then you may contact me or the given number at the end. Thanks. Request God that may everyone be happy, may everyone be free from all diseases, may everyone see goodness and auspiciousness in everything. May none be unhappy or distressed. With this, we start our program and we'll go to the next slide, which tells about how to monitor, troubleshoot, and optimize the performance of an RO plant to its beds. So this actually will have a lot of algorithms to understand and a lot of data points to understand, and I'll request all of you to give full attention and we'll start with understanding what is reverse osmosis. Okay, so we see a video about what is reverse osmosis.
Osmosis is a naturally occurring process in which a liquid, such as water, spontaneously passes through a membrane. The membrane or semi-permeable barrier allows some molecules, like water, through, but other molecules, like the majority of salts, are unable to easily pass through the membrane structure. The flow of liquid through such a membrane occurs naturally to try and even out the salt concentrations between the two solutions. That is, the liquid flows from the less concentrated solution, such as fresh water, to a more concentrated solution, such as seawater. When the direction of liquid flow is reversed, it's called reverse osmosis. By pressurizing the concentrated solution, in this case seawater, we are able to force water molecules in the reverse direction, from the salty seawater side through the membrane to the freshwater side.
So hope you saw the video and understood what is reverse osmosis. What we understand by reverse osmosis? A simple example of osmosis, not reverse osmosis, osmosis only. A simple example of osmosis is the plant roots sucking water from the ground. What happens? The concentration of the solute increases inside a tree, and tree or plant, the concentration of solutes like potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus increases inside the plant, and it needs to dilute it. So when the concentration of solute is higher in the inside the plant, it sucks water from the ground to try to equalize the concentration of solutes. This is what is osmosis. When we go above the osmotic pressure is the pressure which is developed on the membrane of the root, on the skin of the root. If we go above the pressure of the osmotic pressure which developed on the skin of the root, then a reverse osmosis starts happening. In reverse osmosis, in the same case of a plant, the reverse osmosis will be the good water out of the plant going back into the ground under a pressure. So that is what we do in a reverse osmosis plant. We'll try to understand more when we go through the 125, 126 slides today. So we'll have 3 to 4 hours meeting today. Now currently, what are the business challenges we have? We have reduction in production of treated water with time. So the permeate starts reducing, meeting production targets and demands become difficult. Then we have to several times take out the membrane, clean the membrane and do the maintenance. So high shutdown cost and high cleaning frequency. Then the life of the membrane gets reduced. So number of cleaning you do with caustic, not with acid. Actually acid, HCl has to be used at the end. You normally do it by citric acid and all. We'll learn 7 different formulations of cleaning solutions also. But the number of times you clean the membrane, the life is going to reduce. So if you use caustic for cleaning the membrane, every cleaning is reducing 4% life of the membrane. The membrane which should go for say 6 years, it lives for 1 or 2 years only. And this happens at many places. So there is a high inventory cost because of this reduced membrane life, and you have to keep some spares also. There is a high specific energy and cost because of the fouling of the membranes or because the scale formation in the membrane, and there is a high specific chemical consumption as well, because the chemicals which are used like SMBS or the anti-scalant or the cleaning chemicals, the consumption of those chemicals gets increased. So what to understand here? Seawater or freshwater RO system usually operates with the recovery of 50 to 85%. A seawater RO system will have a recovery of about 50%, while freshwater RO system may go up to 85%. In area where it is really easy to control scale formation with proper RO pre-treatment and anti-scalants, 75% has become somewhat of a standard system for recovery. But when we go beyond 75%, go towards 85%, the water quality towards the tail end membranes or in the second stage of the membranes, they become more scale forming. The quality becomes to drop dramatically because of higher concentration of salts in the later stages of membrane towards the tail stages of the membrane. Or you say the second stage of the membrane will have a lot of scale formation propensity. Now it depends on how do you control all these things with your chemicals. So these are the ionic impurities which we try to remove through reverse osmosis: calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, iron, manganese, aluminum, lithium, strontium. This is on one side, and another one is barium in cationic impurities, whereas the anionic impurities are bicarbonates, carbonates, hydroxides, fluorides, chlorides, sulfates, nitrates, phosphate, and silica. Silica is a very dreadful anion. So what we have in water treatment today are, one is, I can reduce these TDS through ion exchange. The feed TDS can be maximum 1500 ppm, and the product TDS I can get below 1 ppm, or maybe further below by a mixed bed application. Then electrode deionization, where the feed TDS can be 3000 and product TDS can get reduced to 5 to 10% of the feed TDS. Then reverse osmosis, 500 to 40,000. Below 500 TDS, the reverse osmosis is not actually feasible. So you need to go above 500 TDS for installing a reverse osmosis plant, and 40,000 is what seawater has, 40,000 TDS. So you can get 0.2 to 2% of the feed TDS in the output. And then finally we have multi-stage flash evaporators, where you can feed 70,000 ppm of TDS, and the product TDS would be 5 to 10%. Today we are talking about reverse osmosis, and we are taking in consideration both the kind of reverse osmosis. One is brackish water reverse osmosis and also the seawater reverse osmosis. So what are the impurities which has effect on RO, and what are the common solutions? We'll talk about the solutions in details in later slides, but let us see the table here. The first one is turbidity or the suspended silica. It fouls the ultrafiltration or RO membranes, and the solution is good coagulation, good settling, and a good filtration. Then the second one is color. This indicates organic, iron, and it can be harmful for RO membranes. Similarly, organic matter, which can foul membranes and may be detrimental to the process, it affects the lead membranes, the first membranes where the feed comes in. So the first membrane or second membrane gets fouled very fast, and your feed pressure increases rapidly. What is the solution? Of very good coagulation, settling, and filtration, followed by activated carbon and addition of appropriate specialty chemicals like good flocculant will help us to reduce this organic matter in the clarification or the pre-treatment stage itself. Then comes the bacteria. This will depend upon the type of bacteria which can be harmful to RO membranes. And again, coagulation, filtration, settling, that means the pre-treatment plays a very important role. And then you can apply ultraviolet rays, UV, high intensity ultraviolet rays, ozonation or superchlorination. Then fifth impurity is iron. Scaling and fouling of RO membranes can happen due to iron, and it can damage membranes if iron is more than 100 ppb parts per billion, 100 micrograms per liter. If it is more than 100 micrograms per liter in the feed water, the lead membranes, the front end membranes are going to be affected adversely, and it's slightly difficult to clean these kinds of membranes. Then what is the solution? What is the proactive step you can take? You can take you can do aeration before the coagulation stage. Aeration will convert these iron into uh, ferric salts and will coagulate in coagulation chamber. Then filtration, and filtration through manganese zeolite will also help. Or then otherwise you have to use appropriate antiscalant if you are not able to reduce iron in the source. pH. High pH or low pH can both induce problem for RO membrane. So you have to maintain right kind of pH in the feed water by addition of either acid or alkali. Normally, if you know Langmuir stability index, there is a stability index called Langmuir stability index. We have to keep the pH in such a form that the LSI, Langmuir stability index, is slightly negative, 0.1, minus 0.1 or minus 0.2. Then comes other impurities. Calcium magnesium hardness, they will form scale in the end membranes, in the tail membranes, or the second stage of the membrane. Most of the RO plants will have first stage and second stage. So second stage will have higher concentration than the first stage. Then the impurity sodium. Actually, sodium does not cause much, but it increases the TDS, and the permeate TDS will also increase because sodium being monovalent, the size of the sodium atom is so small that it passes through the RO first. That is why when we do RO tests, we talk about sodium permeation level. So normally, if the modern membranes are seen, the salt passage is mentioned as sodium passage. How much sodium is passing through the membrane? Modern membranes are designed to have 0.2 percent 0.2% of sodium in the permeate. Say suppose you are adding 100 ppm of sodium inside feed as feed, then you must get 0.2 ppm of sodium at the outlet. So if sodium is high in the feed, then you will be getting high sodium in the permeate, and the downstream, if there is an ion exchanger having H plus resin or Mb, then again it will have a pass from the ion exchange cation resin also, because cation resin has the least affinity towards sodium. Then we talk about bicarbonates, carbonates, alkalinity, hydroxide, etc. So these will cause scale the end membranes with scale forming cations. As we understand, the cations are mostly calcium, magnesium. So we need to add acid to maintain the LSI, Langley stability indices, to minus 0.1, minus 0.2, and addition of appropriate anti-scalant is required. Then sulfate. Sulfate also causes scaling as calcium sulfate, magnesium sulfate, and chloride. This is also a monovalent atom, and this will also pass through the RO first. So when we do a seawater desalination through RO membranes, we mostly get sodium chloride in the outlet. And downstream, if we put ion exchanger, again it may pass. So silica is again a scale forming compound. Remember, if the silica is up to 200 or 250 ppm in the reject, it is manageable with chemical addition. But if the silica is higher than 250 ppm in the reject, then it is absolutely difficult for anybody to control silica scaling will happen in the tail end membranes or in the second stage membranes. Then free chlorine. Free chlorine damages the RO membranes, in a short span of exposure. So if you expose RO membranes to free chlorine of about 2 ppm for 2 hours, your salt passage or the permeate conductivity will go double. How it is measured? You can measure free chlorine, but normally it has to be controlled through ORP, oxidation reduction potential control, which is an online equipment where the ORP should be less than 100 millivolts. And how to control these? You need to dose SMBS. Either you can pass through activated carbon filters, but even after passing through activated carbon filter, you may have to dose SMBS, sodium metabisulfate, to control the ORP below 100 millivolts. This is a throttle valve, it is going through, it is at 260 psi. Then after passing the first two membranes, the reject will have 244 psi, and this is the second stage membrane, where the second stage membrane will have 228 psi. So the delta P has to be measured like 260 psi minus 244 psi for first stage, and the second stage is 244 minus 228 psi. So there will be a pressure variation. Similarly, there will be a salt increase through the membranes. When you are adding, say the TDS is low here, the salts are low, but they are going to concentrate each after each element. So from the first element, it will concentrate more to the second to the third to the fourth, and then when it is going to the second stage, it is more concentrated. So if any scaling has to happen, it will happen in the second stage first, and even in the second stage, the tail end membranes will have scaling more. So if you are not finding DP high in the second stage, but if you are finding DP high in the first stage itself, then it may be colloidal fouling or organic fouling or suspended fouling, which are happening in the front end membranes, in the lead membranes. But if the scaling has to happen, it will happen first in the tail end membranes of the second stage, or if it is a single stage only, it will happen in the tail end membranes of the first stage itself. what we have to derive out of this? How we have to derive out of this? What we have to derive is permeate flux, falling rate, net driving pressure, and temperature. To use this to find what is there in the black box. Use those data to find what is there in the black box, and those data will tell you what is happening in the system. So whenever you are having falling due to NOMs, that is humic acid or fluvic acid, you will have the permeate conductivity decreasing rather than increasing. In India, we have several cases of this NOM fouling, and also I've seen River Nile with this full of NOMs. So East Africa may also be facing this similar problem. About West Africa, we have to understand more about the water quality and all. And then antiscalant fouling, if antiscalant is dose higher than the requirement, say normally antiscalants are required at 2.5 to 3 ppm, but if somebody has asked you to dose 5 ppm, then you may observe these indications that pressure drop is normal to increased, feed pressure is increased, and salt passage is normal to increased, and it will happen severely in the second stage. Oxidant damage that I told you already, ORP, if you are adding chlorine, ozone, or KMNO4, though Nigeria, maybe chlorine is what is being added over there, or chlorine dioxide. So you may find if there is an oxidation damage, then these are the indication where the salt passage will definitely increase. Then hydrolysis damage, abrasion damage, O-ring leaks. If O-rings has failed here, failed at any interconnectors or adapters, these are the things where you will see that feed pressure is normal to decreased. What is glue line leaks? Glue line leaks are, a glue is being pasted between two membranes. So likewise, there are flocks of membranes, many membranes are there. So one membrane to the another membrane, they are glued along with the edges. So if there is a glue line leakage, which happens due to permeate back pressure, or it may also happen when you take the pH beyond 11 during cleaning. During cleaning, if you are taking the pH beyond 11, glue line leakage may happen. So in both the cases, in O-ring leaks and in glue line leaks, you will have similar indication that pressure drop is normal to decreased, feed pressure is normal to decreased, and salt passage is increased. But the places it will happen, it will be different. O-ring leaks may be random and will be found through probe test, and glue line leaks, it will happen mostly in the first stage itself, because high pH will damage the first stage membranes first. Now, this is for you, for the supervisors and managers, to tell the operators. If operators have seen this, then managers has to see this, and further manager can, if they cannot see so many, then they can go with a smaller normalized pressure drop, normalized permeate flow, normalized salt passage. I put all these things in the Excel sheet for you to understand. So you can take the Excel sheet and use it for your purposes also. And then if you are not able to maintain the Excel sheet, kindly ask me to help you with our software. So if it is metal oxide failure, we are measuring normalized pressure drop, NPD, normalized permeate flow, NPF, normalized salt passage. Now coming to organic fouling. If it is mixed, again you can go with the two. If it is biological matter or NOM, you can go with the third one as well. Third one is STPP 2%, 0.025% sodium salt of DDBS, sodium salt of cyclobenzene sulfonate, and this will be a very good solution again. Remember, in both the cases, pH should not go above 10. Okay, in the harsher solution, where 5 is required, is metal oxides. When it is metal oxides falling, we need to use 5. So it is sodium hydrosulfite which is used. For the polymeric silica fouling, the harsher one is 7th, and 7th is pH of 11.5, because at 11.5 silica gets solubilized with 1% of NaOH sodium hydroxide solution. And the harsher cleaning for biological matter and NOMs, it is solution 6, which is 0.1% of NaOH and 0.03% of sodium disulfate. Okay, this is about the chemicals. It goes like this. You get the indicators here, and you understand the kind of fouling it may be taking place inside. Based on the fouling, you decide which to be used. First, you should try all gentle cleaning solution because they will not harm the membranes. Then these are the solutions, the formulation of the solutions, how to change the direction of the membrane. Okay. See what is happening here. Lead end membrane which had the fouling, all the membranes are taken back. So second membrane, third membrane. The first membrane is reversed and it is put as the third membrane. Then the second membrane will come in place of second membrane, and the third membrane will come in the as a first membrane. Is that happening? We'll see it again. See, going up, second one here, third here, first membrane reversed, put as a third membrane, then second membrane going back, and then third membrane as the first, right? Now after this, what I recommend is you do a open thorough flushing. Don't plug it with the pipes. You do a open thorough flushing for at least 1 or 2 hours. You will get the desired flow, desired conductivity and desired output through the simple adjustment of the membranes. Okay. When you see that if the startup condition, the normalized permeate flow was say 15 meter cube per hour and it dropped, you cleaned it and it went up, but the baseline is not touched, you need to clean it earlier actually. So if you're finding, say in 1 month data or 3 months data, if you're finding that you're not going back to the baseline performance, need to clean it earlier. This is why I have shown this graph to tell you that baseline data are very important. If the baseline data you're not going back and achieving, and then you are delaying your cleanings, slowly your normalized permeate flow is going to get reduced, and maybe in 1.5 or 2 years you have to change the membranes. pH adjustment. Now pH, lowering the pH to 6 will reduce the bicarbonate concentration by 80%. So this is good, but I will recommend calculate Langmuir stability indices. Though our Excel sheet which I have shown will also have LSI, RSI and precarious scaling index. Then organic rejection, falling rate, system will function permeate flux. Organic molecule less than 200 molecular weight will pass through in the permeate. Higher than 200 molecular weight, Dalton. 200 is Dalton's, huh? 200 Dalton molecular weight will be rejected by RO. Now cleaning has to be done under low pressure. If you do it under high pressure, then again the foulants get embedded in the system. Cleaning with high pressure creates a force that holds the foulants against the membrane.